Good morning. Jesus continues his scary apocalyptic talk here in the gospel, right? Where the body is, there also the vultures will gather. But let's not talk about that. It's the feast day of St. Albert the Great, Albertus Magnus, a great Dominican teacher from the 1200s. He was St. Thomas Aquinas' teacher, so that means he must have been really, really smart. And he was known for his introduction of Aristotle into the kind of Christian philosophical way of thinking that really allowed St. Thomas to be able to give us some very precise language for kind of discussing the things of God, especially when we talk about the Eucharist, we talk about the matter and form of the sacrament, we talk about the accident of the bread and the wine, but yet the supernatural presence of Christ as well. So he did that by introducing Aristotle. And he got to Aristotle in an interesting way. He went to the Muslims and he found these two guys, Averroes and Avicenna, who are these Muslim philosophers, and they'd preserved Aristotle kind of through the Dark Ages. And so anyway, that's not really going to help you get to heaven, but there's my philosophy training at work. He was kind of criticized at the time, though, for introducing Aristotle and kind of the way that he did so. And when I was looking at the readings and the final line, anyone who is so progressive as not to remain in the teaching of Christ does not have God. Whoever remains in the teachings has the Father and the Son. Now, let's be careful with that word progressive. In fact, even in the lectionary, it's in quotes. Anyone who is so progressive, who has progressed on from Christ. Don't think of it in our modern political terms of progressive and conservative, but rather anyone who's progressed beyond Christ. And when we get into academics, especially studying theology, talking about the things of God, trying to put precise language to the things of God, it's very easy for us to just kind of move beyond. I remember a lot of my professors in the seminary, especially the scripture professors, it seemed like they were studying this book that was contained, and they didn't really realize that the book was bigger than them. They didn't realize that the book was about God. They just wanted to try and kind of make a science out of it, progressing beyond Christ. And it's very easy in our modern world for us to progress beyond Christ because we're smart. We think we're smarter than our ancestors as well. We think we're smarter than some guy from the 1200s that, read some old dusty books with some Muslims and talked about a, before Christ philosopher. But in reality, when we allow ourselves to focus so much on what we can know and kind of how we can prove it, especially when we want to prove other people wrong, when we move beyond love, when we move beyond sacrifice, we move beyond Christ, we've progressed away from Christ. And so I think it's important practice for us to regularly, as we examine our conscience, ask ourselves, in what ways have we progressed beyond Christ? In what ways have I allowed my own worldly knowledge, my own understanding to take precedence over the teachings of Christ? Right? It's Friday, so it's a day that we fast and we abstain from meat or we abstain from some other thing. Why do we do that? Well, because it unites us to Christ and his suffering in a very small way. So it's a small way, so it's not really that important. The church, come on, church, get with the times and sort of move along. But in reality, we go back 800 plus years and we look to the teachings of Albert. We look to the teachings of his student, St. Thomas Aquinas. Go back another 1,200 years to the writings of John, to the words of Jesus. Have we progressed beyond them? Have we allowed ourselves to, in this modern world, become so dependent on ourselves and what we can do? To become so dependent on technology? To become so dependent on wealth? To become so dependent on politics that we've progressed right beyond Christ? Let us reflect on that. Let us ask through the intercession of St. Albert the Great that we may be able to always center ourselves on Christ, and that everything that we do, that we say, that we think may always be rooted in his teachings.